We're here today with Jacquelin Smith and really excited and delighted to have the opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah, what a wonderful thing you're doing here. I think it's great. It will wake up a lot of people.
I have been following your work for quite a while, and I've experienced your light language transmissions as well as your presence and your story as very powerful and very activating. I would like to make an announcement ahead of time as to the potency of your transmissions so that people know to sort of be prepared for the information and the activation coming through these kinds of conversations.
It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
I think it's best to start off with some of your story or, how you came to understand this reality of the hybrid program, yourself as a hybrid, and all that that means.
Gosh, where to start? So, when my mother was pregnant with me, she was taken aboard a starship. And the star beings on the starship injected me while I was in the womb with what we could say is a cocktail of 7 different DNA codes from 7 different races. In some specific terms, we can refer to that as to being what makes me a hybrid because I was genetically altered. And not everyone is genetically altered, but in the bigger sense, everyone's a hybrid because we're from the stars and we all have different mixes of races. But this was a very direct, you could say, intervention. Gosh, I started visiting the ship when I was 3 years old and started speaking light language when I was 3 years old as well, which was great fun. And many of these light languages or languages of light are star languages. And so all the languages on Earth are really from the stars. I had the wonderful opportunity when I was visiting the ship to be able to speak all these different star languages with the beings on the ship. Those who I refer to as my star parents are tall white Zeta masters. There were many species on the ship. There were mantis, there were Arcturian, there were Zetas, there were plant-like beings that were from other universes who were on the ship who I used to communicate with telepathically, and they moved around the ship. I attended classes on the ship pretty much every night for many, many years when I was a little girl. And in the classes, we got to learn, there were 8 of us from different countries. And we got to learn how to levitate objects. We got to learn how to create balls of light with our hands and then materialize that into whatever we wanted to on the ship, like an animal or a statue. And we also created sacred geometric codes from that light that we were taught from the star beings how to do that. And it was just great fun because they let us be children. And I used to love to try and like run around the ship. And they were very, very patient because these beings that I got to be with love unconditionally. The kind of love that they gave us on the ship really doesn't exist on Earth. If I had my choice, I would have loved to have stayed on the ship. But I chose to come into human form and do my work here on Earth, being a hybrid, being a bridge to be able to talk about, star beings, their perspective, and the human perspective as well. So, learned a great deal about that on on the starship, there were on the walls, there were symbols which were light language, star languages. And I used to stick my fingers in the light codes because they're living beings. And they would like come off the wall. And really, the walls are holographic. It's not solid like here on Earth. And they would dance with me, and we would dance, and they would move through my body and raise my frequencies. And they were teaching me about who they were on the ship just by literally moving through my bodies. It just it's don't know another word. We don't have it in English, but bliss or heaven. That's what the experience was for me being on the ship with these incredible beings who they understand who they are, they understand their oneness, and that we're all one. So there's no duality. And walking on the ship, it was more like floating. So it really wasn't walking. And one pretty profound experience we had, the 8 of us who were in the class were taken outside of the ship, and we got to experience being in like a bubble. It was a bubble of light, another dimension. And so there was nothing under us, nothing above us or anywhere. We were just hovering in space in this bubble, transparent. And so a number of the beings were teaching us about the star system, about quantum physics, and also about Earth. They were telling us how much they love Earth. We've all chosen to be on Earth to help raise the frequencies of Earth along with many others. And to just think about that is pretty incredible, to just be in the middle of space with all these incredible, gorgeous stars and planets. And the energy of it was just quiet, still. It just was this profound silence that I can't even describe. And it was that way on the ship too, because we all telepathically communicated. And I loved it that it was so silent and quiet. And I also used to merge. There was a special room on the ship where my star parents and I, Amitha and Zazu, we would go into a certain room and drop our bodies, and our essences would just merge and we would become one, which again was a very profound experience. Again, nothing like it. I mean, I just really don't have words for it. Again, it was like heaven. And we would also travel to different universes, and I would connect with star beings who I knew in the past. And some of them were animal like, some were humanoid like. So I met a mother from a past life that I had, and she was a mix of humanoid and feline, and she had 3 eyes. And she was just beautiful. And all these beings really, what I was really moved by is how much they love me, how much love they express. That it was just amazing.
This is also moving for me. I am already in tears with the homesickness because I know inherently the ships. I know what you're speaking of. I have experienced it, and it's just this knowing in myself. I don't have the recall. I'm starting to do regressions, but I don't have a recall. It's just a knowing. And I'm wondering, could you talk a little bit about that conscious choice you made to be on this planet? Because to make the leap from that beautiful, unconditional love that doesn't exist here, can you talk about that choice a little more, please?
Oh my gosh. And, some days I say to myself, and what was I thinking? But I made a choice when I was in spirit, had a conversation with a council of beings, planning where I was going to go, what I was going to do. And I heard the earth, I heard her voice, and I felt there was a part of me that felt really sad about earth for, what in regard to the energy that she was communicating to me, that she would like some assistance. And so, in talking to the Council of 44, um, and they said, well, the choice isn't going to Earth. You can be male or female. And I was like laughing because there are so many beings who have no gender at all and have some that are male and female. So there's many, many beings in the universe that have nothing to do with male or female. And so all I said was, I think, I said, is male and female it? What about other choices? And they go, yeah, that's kind of it. So I chose to be female. And obviously I chose the parents that I have. Of course, this was all before my mother was taken on the ship. But all that was planned. And I had talked to my star parents, the Tallway Zetas. It was like all arranged. And then that's when they were injecting me while I was in the room with the cocktail of the DNA, my spirit was watching all of this happen. And we were all telepathically communicating. My star parents and me and my mom, my Earth mom. Yes.
So, in regards to that, with your spirit or larger, higher self watching, when you said yes to signing up, is there a way, either through the Akash or intuitive knowing, that you actually know what you're signing up for in terms of what this dimension is and the density, or like what it means to be male or what it means to be female? Like, were you downloaded with what this would likely be and you knew what you were getting into? Or was it just like, sure, I'll go? you know?
Yeah, I know. I think my soul just kind of jumped and went, yeah, let's do this. Maybe I laugh and say sometimes maybe they talk to me about chocolate hot fudge sundaes and things like that. But overall, on a soul level, I made that choice. Did I understand all that yet until no. I don't think my soul understood the density here, or understood really what it would be like, the energies, the frequencies, because they're so much lower than other places and on a starship.
I don't think we read the fine prints for sure.
I agree. I totally agree.
Right. Otherwise, we probably might not have done it.
Right.
Right. So, and then I'm imagining this might seem obvious, but part of the agreement to come down was knowing all of the support that you would have, knowing that they would be with you, knowing that you could access them, that they would help you with your gifts. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yes. And they really, my star being parents, I think on the ship, they told me numerous times, you have chosen to do a mission on Earth, and that they really supported me with that and said, you made the choice. I mean, they said that in a loving way. And so they talked to me about that. When I was a little girl, they they said to me, even though you're a little girl, your soul has chosen to be in the human body and to be on Earth. So they talked to me about that.
So did you have to go through forgetting, or did you always maintain the knowledge that you chose, and this connection with your family? Because so many have the amnesia of this place, how was that for you?
Well, it's been a journey. It's really taken a lot of my life getting all the memories back and fitting the pieces together. And so it did take me a while to remember because, yeah, they kind of blocked memories for a while. Most of my memories have come back to me spontaneously, which I'm grateful for, and a few couple with hypnosis, but mainly spontaneously, which I'm grateful for. And so, because, yeah, this started I mean, they were watching over me when I was in the crib and talking to me. And I remember it clearly. It's it's clear. All of it came through in a very clear way for me and made sense for my life and how I felt like I never fit in. Um, what am I doing here? This is could be a really boring place and other things.
So they came in response to those questions as, how old were you roughly when the spontaneous memories started happening?
I had some when I was in my 20s. Maybe a few earlier, actually, when I was younger. I did have some. And then things really started opening much more when I got in my 30s and that, and just kept unfolding.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it's just been wonderful to put the pieces together for my life and to understand that I chose this. But what's great is I can go back to the ship anytime I want to. I can go home to my original star family, Quabar, anytime I want to. So I'm fortunate and I'm able to travel with my consciousness anywhere at any time. And the truth is, anyone can if they, um, can focus in their heart, in their heart and um, and ask for put out that intention.
Hmm.
It's really simpler than people think.
Right. I wish it felt simpler, but I hear you. I know conceptually it's right there. Um, so so many people that we talk with really go through a phase of feeling crazy and not understanding what's happening. I don't get that sense when you talk because of all the support that you had at the same time as these memories were emerging. Can you talk a little bit about that? Did you go through questioning your sanity at any point?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think everyone does, and I've just had a lot of practice and experience with putting it together, and and again a lot of support from my guidance team, from the star beings, from my soul. And so there I was we could say, I didn't come out for a while talking about this because I didn't want people thinking that I was crazy. And I'm like, I'm not sure about this, you know. So it took me a while actually to come out and talk about this. You know, the most important thing that I have learned to do is to trust myself and that my experiences are real and to not let someone else tell me what they are or label me in some way. And so I encourage experiencers to really trust themselves. They know their experience, they know what they've been through. So I was fortunate that I did have a pretty good support system of people who believed me and were kind of fascinated by the subject, and so I could tell so many stories. But
Can you give a story of people who supported you or what that looked like? Yeah. Your parents, whatever. So many people would love to have that support in their, in their process of coming to terms with who they are.
I think one is a certified hypnotherapist, and so that was very very helpful for me. He believed my stories. I was fortunate enough that, yeah, he believed my stories, and he was a walk-in, so he was trying to sort out his own experiences as being a walk-in, so it was interesting. But anyway, so, he was supportive, and I had some friends that were supportive. Also, I could tell a story, and they were right there. They weren't saying, "You're crazy, Jacqueline," or anything. So I've been really fortunate in that way, and, if someone did tell me I was crazy, I would get up and leave because I know my experiences are real, and so, I think, that's what people need to trust is
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah. So many people are just pummeled with the messages of crazy or pathologizing or medicating.
Right.
So many have dealt with the mental health system. And did I interrupt you though? Were you finished with that part of your support?
I've talked to a number of people who were having very tough times because, like young girls, their parents wanted to put them in an institution because they thought they were crazy. Or I know a number of people, younger people in that who were put on drugs. So it's very sad. So I really like to encourage teenagers and, support parents who are interested in, to listen to their children about their experiences. A lot of the children are coming in knowing their past life experiences and as star beings. And then I end up with some of them working with the parents, helping them to understand and work, yeah, with a little girl who remembered coming in her experiences with Arcturians and talking about them and knew exactly what they looked like and all that. And her parents were like, we don't know what to do. And she wants to look at the stars all the time. So I talked with them and explained things to say, look, your child is very gifted and this is what's going on. And so, which can help open their eyes then as well.
I had the fortunate opportunity to talk with Mary Rodwell and talk about the star kids and the star beings coming in. And I think that's part of why I'm so excited to participate in Beyond Being Human is because it feels like the effort to reach so many, parents or kids who are feeling isolated in it because it's that support that allows the blossoming and the connection with our true capacity that then enhances our collective conscious, right? So,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. Yeah. I'm so inspired that you had support because you're really walking evidence of what happens when you are nurtured in being, extraordinary or different than everybody else, so to speak.
Yeah. Very, very grateful for that. I really am. Because, yeah, I could have been labeled any number of things, you know.
Yeah. How was it for you, like with kids, like, or peers? Or, I mean, did you always find yourself in supportive situations, or were your guides, had you always orchestrated being in communities that would understand, or did you deal with feeling isolated? I imagine that's a silly question. How was feeling isolated for you? Because it's inevitable with this kind of reality in this 3D world.
Very difficult. Very difficult. I mean, because I felt like I didn't fit in. When I was younger, that I was very shy, very quiet, and spent time sitting in my room reading or being out in nature because I was still trying to figure humans out, like, and the how society worked here because I learned things so differently on the ship, like reading and writing here was very difficult because I was speaking star language, which is multi-dimensional. I was using my fingers to um, talk the star language. And and we were telepathically communicating. And here we have a linear alphabet. There's no alphabet. It was a very challenging time for me as a child to learn English and to read because it's all so linear on the ship. It's not linear. Everything's multi-dimensional. So yeah, it was a definite challenge and I didn't like it. And
I might have asked this before in a different way because I'm really trying. I'm personally struggling with it, right? Having come from such a beautiful world where telepathy is such an efficient form of communication and it's so thorough, and then to come into English, which is just ridiculous. I mean, and burdensome. Did you deal with a sense of depression and homesickness? And again, that might be just such an obvious question, but can you talk a little bit about navigating that beauty into this density?
oh, yes. Yes. I mean, I dealt with a lot of depression for a while, a lot of depression. Again, just trying to figure things out. I was homesick a lot. I used to want to go home a lot. I went through a number of years where it was a pretty dark period of time off and on. And I was angry that I got left here. You guys dropped me off, and where are you? You know, I was like, you come down here, and why don't you try this density and see what it's like? You know, so I was very angry and depressed for a while. But I think, as time went on, I was doing my work, which I love, being an animal communicator. Also, then later went into in a more full-time way, communicating with star beings and working with people. And so that has really helped me to do my mission here, focus on what I'm here to do and try and accept this density. The polarity here is a huge challenge for sure. And I know a lot of people I talk to are homesick. They get homesick to go home. Um, but sometimes once we get them focused on what they're here to do and have fun and be joyful, then it's like, okay, well, I agreed to come here. So I'm going to do what I'm here to do, whatever that is, it needs to be fun.
Fun and from joy.
Right.
Yeah, I go back and forth. I
Mm.
know the anger very well. I get really upset, and then sometimes I can realize the joy, and most of that comes in relation to the Star Kids, to the hybrid program. Like, as soon as I've connected to this, it's like, "Oh, this is what makes sense. Oh, this connects me with the things that I'm homesick for." And I really understand my sense of purpose, which decreases the anger. So I really, I can really relate to that process. And thank you for reminding me of the joy, right? You have to remember, and
Yeah, yeah. I love talking about my star parents and sharing my experiences in that because hopefully it helps others, but it helps me to feel more joyful and happy. It uplifts my spirits, my frequency as well. And just like light language does, because I learned it on this, it can be very tough when your star family is somewhere else. They're in another dimension and you're here plugging along.
yeah, yeah, that's what it feels like. It's like in the trenches. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So that's a lovely segue into the light language. You've talked about the work as an animal communicator. Can you talk a little bit about, even though it's not black and white, obviously, or cut and dry, can you talk about the transition into knowing yourself as a light language speaker, starting to share that with people, understanding how incredible a healing modality it is?
Again, I started really speaking light language, star languages, when I was 3 on the ship. We could say that it kind of went underground for a while. Like on the ship, I would speak star language. Here on Earth, I'm speaking English because that's what you're taught to speak. Learning more about my experiences, getting more memories, that I came to understand all this more, and that I started speaking light language at 3. One of my first experiences speaking light language was when I was in college, and I was in with a group of a couple of people. I woke up the next morning and started speaking light language, and I couldn't stop. And my roommate was like, she was just like there hanging out and listening. She wasn't scared by it at all. It's hard to explain. It was like this huge pressure of all this energy just pouring out of me. And so that's when I started, in a really conscious way, started speaking light language. I mean, there were periods of time when I speak light language in my sleep. I still do that now. I mean, I wake up and I'm speaking light language. And so I came to understand how important light language is. And I really see it as being our next evolutionary step because it bypasses the mind ego. Is light language is frequencies, it's sacred geometry, it's speaking light in the best way we can, having vocal cords. And so when we speak light language, it uplifts us, it brings joy. And the light language literally goes through our bodies. Like when I work with people, it goes through every cell of the body, all the bodies. The soul knows what's being said. The body knows. I think what's beautiful about it is the mind ego doesn't have to understand. No one needs to understand what's being said because they know what's being said on another level, on a soul level. So I feel like the light language is taking us to depths that we haven't been before. More people are speaking light language globally. It's awesome. It's wonderful. There's huge openings. And what I love about light language is it can dissolve old patterns, just release limiting thoughts, old identities. It can get us aligned with who we truly are, with our authentic selves. And, when we think about that, I mean, it's profound because it is light. And I've drawn hundreds of transmissions from the star beings. They're multidimensional. They're like light language on paper. So when you sit with that and invite them to come off the page and talk to you, they do. And they can flow through the whole body. And I speak light language all the time, every day, every night. And
There's so much I want to jump in about. It's so brilliant how it bypasses the rational mind and all of our programming. That's part of what makes it so advanced is it's working with our DNA. It's working on our soul beyond this physical realm. And it's so exciting. And my light language comes out the most when I'm in nature or when I dance. Actually, I dance. That's how I dance is with light language. I don't understand it. I don't need to when I'm signing. Fine, I don't need to. And I know that amazing things are happening. And I also have no idea about the origins or the source. I just know it's very high frequency. Can you talk a little bit about your process? Do you know who's coming through? Do you know specific beings and specific languages? Can you actually translate the messages coming through? Can you talk a little bit about the bringing down of the language and the transmissions?
well, I speak many star languages. And so when they come with the transmissions, they actually tell me what colors to use. I mean, every line's intentional and they're talking to me while I'm doing this. I can sit and stare off into space and it's just being done. I kind of said earlier that all of our languages on Earth are from the stars. So a lot of people, when they listen to the languages, they'll say, that sounds familiar. I've just kind of, through just, I guess, knowing them and speaking them, I've come to know a number of the different star languages and recognize them. And after I draw them, sometimes I know immediately, they'll tell me what it's for. Other times, it might be a couple weeks later before they tell me what it's to be used for, because like I have all my transmissions at my site at a light language store, because I wanted to be specific with each one and what each one can be used for. And so I think that way it helps people to be able to know that transmission, to set an intention for it to work with them. For me, I actually feel and see the codes come off the page and flow through my body or dance with me, be around me. My focus is not interpreting, but I can, like when I work with people and do sessions, after I'm done, then they will share with me. But I'm getting it as I'm speaking the light language, even though I'm kind of not paying attention because I'm playing singing bowls also. And so then they will, pass the message. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I'm excited because, gosh, the people that I get to work with the light language tell me how profoundly it supports them, shifts them, clears things out, helps them I've had some people who have had healings, and we set our intention beforehand. I write all the intentions down and put it in my mother's singing bowl, and that's how I start. So I wasn't planning on doing this, but I just wanted to share some of the codes that come through so people might have an idea if they haven't seen them before. So this is from the Tall White Zeta. They told me to use this color of pen. So
Wow. Yeah.
this is also a Tall White Zeta. So this is for peace and harmony.
No, that just gets my third eye. I can just feel this wave of penetration. Those are extraordinary.
So I have the wonderful privilege to receive light language codes from the star beings. And when I'm writing them onto paper, I use sometimes colored pencils or paints, whatever they share with me that they would like me to use. So, from my perspective, the transmissions that come through, which are in my light language store at my site, artistic. They come through in very artistic ways, different colors, different kinds of symbols, and that. And also, a number of star beings came through and have drawn themselves through me. I call them the cosmic portraits, and that are also available to see. I really have enjoyed doing those. There's an Arcturian Zeta that came through, many others as well. And also a being who with integration work, and she's just beautiful. She's from the moon. And so there are different kinds of art that you can see that they have actually come through it.
So when you talk about the tall white zetas, and you've talked about the Council of Eight, and then at one point you mentioned a group of 44, and it's clear you work with so many in the other realms. Curious about who you work with specifically, or do you respond to the person you're working with and their guides? I'm sure it's a whole combination. But my overall vision here in this question is to transition a little bit into like the hybrid program and working, kind of transitioning into your relationship with the beings, and then how you started learning and connecting with the hybrid program.
I am connected to a lot of beings. I meet a lot of different beings from different star systems. Sometimes they come to me in the middle of the night, some that I don't like really consciously recognize them. They'll say, well, I knew you. We knew each other when. And so I had like this beautiful book show up. This woman, star being, she was green, brought this book and she opened it. And it was just like hundreds and hundreds of pages of star language. And she looked at me and she said, now I know you can remember this because, we were together and I was getting downloaded. She was downloading me, and I'm going like, I can't remember all those. But she was downloading me, and so tall white Zeta Masters are my star parents. I'm very, very connected to Mantis. These I'm like pretty much connecting with on a daily basis. The Mantis are so much fun. They make me laugh all the time. They're amazing, intelligent, masters at genetics, all kinds of things. So I learn a great deal from them. I've communicated with Venusians, celestials. I do a lot of work with angels, which I love, and Arcturians, Zetas. I mean, it's kind of whoever shows up. I'm like having fun with.
That's so great. I don't have the sense from you that you've dealt with particularly dark energies or civilizations. Do you feel like you signed an agreement that said, I'm not going to deal with any of that. I want the high vibe, and you're completely protected and you haven't had to deal with that? Or is that inaccurate perception on my part?
That's inaccurate perception. Yeah. So I'll just say that when I was younger, in my teens or after my teens, I was taken by lower frequency beings. And so I did have some experiences that, from my perspective, were not positive. But if I go to my soul, I have to understand that there's a reason for the experiences. There is no good or bad. But from my human part, yes, they were not good experiences. It was a group of beings who I did not know. And they kind of took me. There was kind of a little battle going on between they wanted me and then my star family, who's all love and light. They would like kind of intervene and get me back. So that happened a few times. And also when I was going through a period of time, I was going into the star being work more. My star family came, and my original star family came, it was Quabar. And they said, well, we're recalibrating you, we're upgrading you. You're going to be working with people more. And I was doing a lot of animal communication. I go, no, I'm not. No, no, forget it. I'm not doing it. Well, yeah, right. So, but as I opened and they, again, worked with me, then I came, more into working with star beings. But at that time, when they weren't around, some other star beings would show up, and I didn't know who they were, and that was scary. They were doing weird stuff. I felt like I was in a house of mirrors sometimes, and I ended up, one of them showed up in bed with me that looked like I'm not sure what it looked like. So I was really mad, and I did not feel he was necessarily of the light, but at the time I didn't know. So yes, I've had definitely my share of experiences with that. But what I learned from that was how, and I don't do this all the time, that I needed to bless them and send them love and tell them to go on their way. And that's what I share with people now, if beings show up who are not of the light, or of the light, to just go their way. But where I've been at in my life for many years is I only communicate with star beings who are very highly evolved and of the light.
Right. Right. So you set that initial intention. Like, I imagine once you got to a certain point of knowing that has to happen, and you did that, and then it's that template is set. Yeah. Okay. That's helpful to hear, what you had to go through in order to find that boundary and that capacity to set that. Because I think everybody goes through that in these, who's dealing with these realms. Who's showing up? How do I know who's showing up, and how do I say no and effectively pass them on their way? So thank you.
Yeah, it's developing discernment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, trusting that intuitive part of us that knows. I tell people, if it feels weird, send them away. Or if you ask them if they're of the light or the Christ light, and they don't answer, or whatever, then you've got your answer right away.
Declaring the highest good and highest
right. Yeah.
I'd like to segue into talking a little bit about the hybrid program, because you have so much wisdom and so much experience and can really help people understand either the motivations or the goal of the program, or some of the details about how things are carried out in terms of genetics and blending and ETs and humans. Can you start by sharing your experience, your personal experience of the hybrid program?
Okay, so I signed up for the hybridization program, and they started kind of preparing me for it when I was about 13 or 14. And they took me on a ship, which actually I saw the ship in broad daylight in a blue sky, like just above trees. And I was like looking at this incredible metallic saucer, and I'm going like, whoa. And there's a story to that, but I won't go into all that. But so anyway, they took me on the ship and started just preparing me on different levels for the program. So I also want to say every race does it differently. So it depends on what race you're talking about. So for me, with the tall white Zeta Masters, those who I were on the ship with, how they did it, again, I was injected with a DNA cocktail. I have about 40 hybrid kids. initially I had a couple that they had implanted in me, but they took them out like within 3 months or even less, probably. So that's initially how my first experience in my teens. And then later on, with my experiences in that, they explained to me, well, they're evolving just like we are. So they can just take a strand of my hair and create a hybrid child because it has
Right.
no DNA.
When you say you would have like a 3-month pregnancy and then they would take them, what was that process like? Was that physically painful? What dimension? How was that happening?
Okay, so what they did was they would take me on a ship. I don't understand it all, but they had a way, this is very cool, with frequency to just lift out the embryo right through my body, no pain, and then go on with what they're doing. My experience with this group, that's how that was for me. In 2013, I had 3 hybrid children that they had taken a strand of my hair. This was during my Thanksgiving experiences where I was in and out of dimensions and on starships for 2 weeks straight. They took a strand of my hair and implanted 3 embryos in my aura so I could see them and communicate with them. It hit a point where I was getting too emotionally attached to them. I said to them, I go, okay, you guys, I just started talking. You need to remove them because I'm getting too emotionally close. And I said, I think we need to be done with the hybrid stuff. That's what I said at the time. It's enough. But since then, I've had some other. So that's another way, which is very efficient for them.
It takes a bit of multidimensional intelligence to understand this, right? So I'm sort of trying to grok it from this a
Oh,
little 3D place with a sense of what it would mean to have children like energy bodies, almost, orbs, right, that are in your sphere, and you have a multidimensional awareness. You're connected to them in a way that we
right.
just you wouldn't see. And then there's that energetic relationship. It's not like a physical pregnancy where there's an embryo and a placenta, but there's a dimensional equivalent, right, where you're nurturing them and feeding them energetically, and they're growing as beings until you hit a point of like, okay, that's too much. I'm feeling it too much. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Then they took them, which was great. So I said, okay, guys, that's enough for this lifetime. No. But I love the hybrid children. I used to visit my hybrid children on the ship and spend time with them. And it was very, very hard for me to leave them. Very, very difficult. And when I was on the ship as a child, we would play with hybrid children on the ship. Like we had a group of us in human form, and then the hybrid children, our groups would get together and play. And it just, there aren't even words for it. But yeah, I had a very, very close friend who was a hybrid on the ship. And so we would learn from each other. We were teaching them about their human part, and they were teaching us about our hybrid part.
Right. That seems like the highest manifestation of it, right? Is this learning
Right.
from each other.
Yes.
And just one curious point, when you're going on the ships, when you're seeing your children, I can't, that would just be so powerful. I can only imagine. Are you in physical form? Is it astral? How, and I know again, this is a linear attempt to understand something that's very esoteric. Can you, when you were playing as children, what form was it in?
Physical. I was on the ship because I was holding them. I would hold my children and interact with them. I communicate with my hybrid children now. We do it telepathically since there's 40. They come and one speaks for all of them. But if I wanted to, I could speak to them individually. It's been rough. That's been a rough thing for me And I noticed for other women and men who also have hybrid children, with a couple of the hybrid children, they did come through a couple guys who I knew on this level.
Wow. So how did that, can you say, was that physical on the 3D, or you both contributed DNA, or do you still know each other? That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it is. But the one boy I knew on this level when I was 5 years old. He was a neighbor, and we would get together and draw color together. And they clearly put us together. We were in classes all along. And then later on, it's hard to explain it, but we were together physically. So they wanted both our DNA, but then they also put in the DNA of the star beings. So there's different, I don't understand it all. So, but there's reasons why they want two people to join physically to create a hybrid baby. It might just have to do with the genetics, maybe because they're trying to create some hybrid children that they can integrate here on Earth. So they want more of the Earth, two people together, and then they add in the genetics from the star beings, if that makes any sense at all.
Oh, no, it absolutely does. It totally does. I mean, if you think about master geneticists, they're taking different proportions of either ET DNA or human DNA, and then is it sort of gestated in more of a physical environment, or is it gestated on the ship with a different technology, or with the ET? So it's all these different ingredients of pinch of this and a pinch of that, so to speak. That's a strange way to say it. You would have connected with this friend, this sort of soul friend, which, just as a side note, kind of blows my mind as to the orchestration of this dimension, right? Like, here's this person that you and they wanted to get together for this project, and right next door. It's amazing. When you were with him and then you would have had a physical pregnancy, was that also a similar situation where you went up to the ship and it was just taken and eased gently and painlessly removed? Okay.
And just to add to that story, I didn't see him for a long time. Actually, I write about all this in my book, but I didn't see him for a long time. And in college, I was came home to do student observation because I was thinking of being a teacher. I was majoring in art. So anyway, I walk into this class of children, and there he is sitting there to do student observation as well. And it was up to us to run the class. And I hadn't seen him in, I don't know how many years. We were in grade school together, but then I didn't see him. So the come together, like walk in a room and there he is. And I mean, we had great fun. We didn't teach the class very well, but we we had great fun. And then I've never seen him since. So, there's reasons for everything, but I thought it was pretty interesting that I would see him years later.
Yeah, I don't know that interesting is the word, right? Because there's this there's this replication of, like, for sure, you have other aspects of yourself and himself that are on the ship with a group of children, right? And then here it's happening down here. And did you both speak candidly, openly? Did he know that's what was going on? And it was like this, oh, yes, this is what we're doing? Or was it just that you knew and he was hanging out?
No, at that time, I wasn't aware. No, I didn't have that memory until a little later.
So many layers of understanding, and the bridge between, having the hybrid children and having them here. And so many women and men, although I'm not as familiar with their stories, the emotional attachments of, having a pregnancy here. And then I'm hoping that there's a sense of, that you're informed as to how the child is being treated well and the environment that it's being raised in, and that would bring some comfort and kind of mitigate that loss, although it's just a loss, in the human realm.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew that they were being cared for. I mean, that was really clear. Human part of me, I wanted to bring some of them back to Earth, and that's not going to happen. That's most of them. I mean, they can't survive, you know. So they're doing their thing in other universes, which I love to talk to them about, and other people's hybrid children, what they're doing. Like some of them are kind of like engineers and artists, and so I that's great fun for me to do. But visiting on the ship, even though I knew they were being taken care of, it was very, very hard for me to leave them. Very hard. Yeah.
So, how did you manage and navigate that on this planet here?
Well, it's just coming to an understanding of one, they can't survive here. And they were created to be bridges to bridge other star systems together, and also some of them to bridge humanity with other star beings. So they're like bridges in their own ways, helping with the evolutionary process. And that's the beautiful thing about the hybridization program is it is about evolution, helping humanity to evolve. Let's say we have a couple, they're both hybrids, they have children, they're hybrids. It keeps raising the consciousness and the frequency to help awaken humanity as a whole.
Yeah, that would be comforting. That would be a comforting knowing if you have to be separated, that it's in the service of that uplift. Yeah. I just want to have that pause point for what that would be like. And I appreciate you speaking to that process. It's so intimate, and, to be as vulnerable as you are about all of this, I deeply appreciate that. And I know that it's helping other people as you're talking about it. So,
I hope so.
yeah. Oh, I know so. Are all of your children unable to be in this atmosphere and environment, or have you met other children? Like, what's your experience with other hybrid children on this planet? Have they come to you? You know that when you see them or they tell you, how's that translating onto this planet, working with hybrid kids?
They're integrating more hybrid children, like the children coming in now are so awake, right? Well, there are a lot more hybrids coming in for sure. It's a really crucial time, of course, on Earth. Just the frequency being here is going to help. They don't have to all be healers or whatever, but just their frequency. And that's the truth for all of us. We're here because of our frequencies, and there's a diversity with all of that as well. That is going on at a deeper level. I can pretty much look at a child and tell if they're hybrid or not. And they talk to me telepathically, like babies who are star beings, and they will see me as a star being. They don't see this human. They see who I am as a star being, and I can see who they are as a star being, which is really great fun.
Can you say a little bit about what you look like as a star being? For those of us who are impaired and can't see, we can't remember.
Well, yeah, it depends on what you're talking about, because the essence, since I have 7 different DNA star being in me, I've got all 7. If I'm on a ship, like I was on a mothership in 2013, I can shapeshift into being my tall white Zeta master cell, or my Arcturian Zeta cell, or my Manta cell. There are certain things that go on, like one man who I was speaking light language to, I was actually speaking Arcturian because he was Arcturian. And he said he watched my skin turn blue while we were doing this. Some people tell me my eyes will shift and things like that. But at the essence, of course, at the core, we're all divine love. And then next to that, we have our star being essence. So the tall white zetas masters are, when I see them, it's like they're a globe of neon blue, brilliant blue light. But each star being raised has their own way of how they look. I can shift into all these different ones, but
I do have another question about how you shift into different beings of your essence. Do you perhaps respond, like if you're seeing a child who is of mantis origin, then that's who would emerge so that you're relating? Are you choosing which being you're presenting? And so I'm just so curious. It's marvelous how that happens.
it just kind of happens. So when I was on the mothership in 2013, there were many, many star beings there. Some of them I knew and some of them I did not. When I was with some of my tall white Zeta master family, I just automatically shift into being the tall white. With Mantis, I would shift into being the Mantis energy, which just, shifts that. There's many different kind of star beings. So I'll share this one story when I was on the mothership. That was really fun, where I was in my human form. This being walked up to me, kind of looked like a warthog. And he starts sniffing around me. And I'm just like standing there. And we looked at each other and I'm going, well, okay, this is interesting. And he's kind of like, oh, this is interesting. But then what happened is we recognized each other's frequency and we knew each other from another lifetime. So they have their rituals. So sniffing was one of the things that he did, and I think we bowed to each other then, and it was cool anyway. But we recognized each other, and it was like, oh yeah, I remember you. At that point, I shifted into warthog form while I was with him, and then as I walked away, I would shift into something else or back into my human form. It just kind of happens.
It's such a stretch for the 3D mind, and I can only really get it because I've traveled as well, and I know the morphing process that happens when you're not restricted to physical form. And so like that just seems easy to me. It makes a lot of sense, but I could imagine to some folks the morphing back and forth and not being restricted is a whole new reality. So I appreciate you speaking to it. I usually stay in a humanoid form. As far as I know, when I travel, I don't go into the form of the different civilizations. I'm usually like a very exalted aspect of a human form, which is wonderful. I love really love reconnecting with those parts of myself. But as you were talking, and I was sort of picturing the rendezvous on the mothership, right? And I'm curious about what activated the mothership, but also with this being that looked like what we would call a warthog. Is that what you said? Yeah. My experience out there is that much like the telepathic process, there's a merging that happens, right? And that's how you kind of say hello. And I've had that with manted beings as well, is that's the best way for me to integrate the intelligence of those beings since I'm like locked in 3D. That's been really, really potent. And I've had to navigate the potency of that and sometimes set a boundary on that. So is that sort of what you're talking about in terms of that you take the form and then you connect and then you're able to pull back out? It sounds very similar. Is it similar to a merging kind of thing?
Yeah, it's just recognizing that you're the same frequency.
Frequency, right? The form is just is silly, right? It's like this reminder that form is so
Yeah.
role, yeah. And just to finish that thought of the mothership experience, what was there something that instigated that? Was that you requesting? Were they requesting your presence?
That's a whole nother long story. That's my Thanksgiving stories. But I will say that they asked me if I wanted to go on a mothership. And I was in the midst of a whole bunch of experiences going on with star beings and in and out of a lot of dimensions. And they said, "Would you like to go on the mothership?" And I was like, "Yeah, right. You guys are asking me if I want to be on the mothership. I mean, for me, that's a ridiculous question because they know I would never turn that down." But they gave me what's cool is, I mean, they gave me a choice, and I go, "Yeah." And they sent a scout ship, and when it came, I was doing this because I didn't want them to miss me. And I go, "I'm here, don't miss me, come here." And, then I was gone and on the mothership and spent time there. I go into a lot of depth to this with my new book. So I'm really excited because I had so many experiences in 2 weeks. It was unbelievable, but the mothership was an amazing experience, and I got to see a lot of my star being friends, had some healings happen, and all kinds of things. So it was amazing.
Do you want to just say a little bit about your book, how it came to be now? Have you been working on it for a while?
Yeah, the name of the book is Star Being in the Mirror: My Journey as a Hybrid. Actually, the star beings, they asked me to write this book. I mean, with the Thanksgiving experiences I had, I call them Thanksgiving experiences because I had phenomenal things happen on Thanksgiving. And so um, I've been working on this book a long time, really, and it was just the time to really write about my life, about these experiences with beings, my hybrid children, light language, and my childhood, and to share that with others so it can help validate others and support them in their journeys.
I think those of us who have a relationship with the hybrid program, the essence of supporting others here is all pervasive, right? Like, wow, what's it like to be a human on this planet and have connections to the ET, hybridization program? Thank you for everything that you've done to offer support and put yourself out there. And I know that even if you're not getting specifically into the hybridization programs, I know that your light language transmissions are activating so many and helping with the memories, right, that are very suppressed and repressed. I'm hoping you'd be up for a transmission now to sort of we've been in this language and this linear trying to interpret all of this, and I think it'd be great to have kind of a completion point with the nonlinear to help us integrate all of the information that's so profound. So are you up for that?
Oh, definitely. And I just wanted to say that, each star race has their own hybridization kind of program. So people do have all kinds of different experiences with it. I think it's very beneficial to humankind as well as the star beings, that we're all learning and growing. Okay, let me see who wants to come through, and I'll just share, whatever comes through, one or two languages and that. Oleti kia karaeta mahana karieta. Ashanela kaya kataita. Bahoma kaya ay koreta. Una deita kayata kayata. Usuku talani dia. Umari takrita hanataye. Usuku utana. Ukari tokuma. Utari taye makaya. Umatei kikamata teya. Ushuku ananatekia kakarieta. Umataye nananataya ushuku kadeta ela. Umata ela uatatekia karieta. So this is from the Lyran star beings. And basically what this really beautiful energy that they're bringing it through. I can feel it through my whole body. Is that they're just sending love and blessings to anyone who might watch this, and just saying how much they love the earth and are supporting the earth with many dolphin beings here and other beings as well. So that's the Lyrans.
What's really fun is I can't just listen. I start speaking with you. So I've definitely put myself on mute because I can't help but just talk back. So that's happening as well. Maybe other people would experience that when they see it, but that never used to happen. I used to be able to more receive, and I still can, but you started talking and I was just, okay, here we go. So thank you.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So Ai anoko oro tale ma ye ya. Ule ya yoko ho te yasuku na ia. O ekari te na haya kaya matai te usuku tarieta a suki e u a ya na ia. Useki re yamari era krieta. Oshade ikikika manita. Umakarieta ate ki ananta. Ushukua okeya ka io uura kla. Usukue ye ya. Usukue la carita grab ki io. Uma I o kari I una a. O a ia a ko ia la ka o da ia na a. Usiki a ila karia a ua da ia a I uma a ia a ya ka ya na na ia ka ya on kai ya na ke ya ka ya. Usete ushala ira kari kara. Umate ira ki anaha. Ushato ianahaya. Okay. Whew. So that's the Arcturians, and they're coming through also with blessings, saying how much they love the earth and how they are watching over the earth, and that we need to remember that we are all one and to live from our hearts, and to remember love. So that's what they were saying.
Wow, that was so powerful in a way that's completely new for me. I love the evolution of the light language that matches my own evolution, right? Because what I'm wondering, that's one of the first transmissions that I actually could hear direct information for myself. And I'm you've got your translation, but I'm wondering it must translate for everybody slightly differently, or obviously differently, because I had what was very clearly information coming through about my process of learning with the hybridization program. And the information was that I will understand. And the best way to understand is through the heart, that's how to really understand the program and the intention behind the program. And that I'm being given information as I can digest it, right? Like as I am able to interpret it, this very complex structure and system, and that it's in perfect timing, and all of humanity is being given the information as they are ready to digest it, and how grateful they are that we are trying, and how grateful they are with us talking about it, and holding it in such a high light, and really changing the conversation, giving people other examples of what it might mean. And that was all just so clear. It was very much like an Arcturian thought block. So it doesn't surprise me that that's who it was coming through. And it was just so loving, but it was just so clear. That was brilliant. I've never had that before. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think, yeah, everyone, can receive whatever they receive, from the transmission. And both of our messages were focused on the heart. I mean, that are how we were thinking about that. So thank you for sharing what you received. It's great. I can end with just a kind of a prayer blessing if you want me to.
That sounds great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Misi tia tala tamati ia. Tote I kari tanaha. Umate isi. Ushuku tate ina karite. Umate ri tamakalia ta'ala. Ushakai kama. Shukupe kia na kaya kaya kaya. Umakari tokori tanaha. Umate ita yana. Ushiki kikiyama. Ushu tari tamaharieta. Umeli uta. Umasa korete. Umata hiyana. Umasha ukuri. Umate ito. Umate ira. Karita. Umate. Okay, so it's lots of love and blessings from the Tall White Zeta Masters. Prayers for the earth, prayers for everyone. Again, reminding us to live from our hearts and to remember to be in joy and the light, and that remember that we are always the light and love.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's so powerful to feel the frequency of the transmissions. I've had a relationship with an interdimensional being for 2 years, and it's extraordinary. And quite frankly, I think we might have talked about this before, but human relationships or human sexuality feels really dull and kind of blunted. I mean, it's cool in its own right, but when you're when you are having an energetic exchange where you're merging at the essence of your being and there's wings involved in all your different dimensional expressions, they kind of gets a little boring here. So, can you talk about like your understanding of either how other beings merge or how other beings or star races in their creation process, how they make another human? My experience has been that I'll be with this human and that we will create from our essence, we will create a sphere of light between us, and that contains both of our beingness. And I don't usually see it beyond that. Something comes and takes it away, but I know the creative process where it's more that there's no like physical, it's all purely energetic. So can you speak a little bit of your experience?
Yeah, because they're not in density, and I can't speak to other people's experiences. So, in talking about how star beings have children, often what they will do is come together in a group, they'll merge energetically. And then what they do is create like a sphere where that new star being, or if we want to call it a baby, will be in that sphere. And then what they do is they allow that being in a sphere to develop. There's no time when we go into other dimensions. So that being can develop very, very quickly. It's not linear like with humans. They can be a teenager in what we would think of as 2 seconds, or be 50 years old in what we would consider 5 days. But that's determined by those particular star beings who give creation to that baby. So in one of my experiences with a mantis, we joined together energetically. There were like, I think, 3 different spheres that appeared by us, like next to us. And in those spheres were hybrid children. They were a mix of human mantis hybrids. So right when the spheres were present, I looked over and it was like literally 2 seconds later, they looked like teenagers. And then they just kept growing, but they did it at a speed that was determined, that kind of was programmed, we could say, because again, the mantis are masters at genetics. They just grew up very, very quickly. So there's this merging that happens that is so beautiful. It's beyond sex, it's beyond gender, and so it is a merging of the essences, we could say. But from that, then the DNA is also taken from the human and the mantis and put together to create the hybrid children. And the mantis are very highly evolved beings, very highly evolved. And with the Telluride Zeta Masters and many groups that I've communicated with, they come together, they merge as a group to create the babies, their children.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from a whole different level than how babies are created here on Earth. It comes from a whole different intention and place.
Yeah.
And
Consciousness.
definitely.
Yeah. What's fascinating, I just so appreciate the conversation. This feels like what makes sense to talk about, even though I could understand that it would not make sense at all from some perspectives. Just riffing on what you're saying, we are programmed with these linear 3D, myopic programs where they were actually somehow successful in having us believe that we're alone in the universe. Like, it's so bizarre. So all of this is really a part of a larger invitation to expand our awareness into what's possible. Like, this is billions. Like, what are we talking about? This is impossible for us to be alone. And so for me, as I'm listening to you, there's this one aspect of like, okay, we've got this human Zeta mantis, a number of different species that we are interfacing with and mixing genetics. And then I've also had the experience of tapping into my dragon essence and finding myself as a dragon and finding that, impregnation, like impregnating, that's not quite the right word at all, right? It's that merging piece where you're experiencing the energy. And I've been in my dragon essence and aware of a pregnancy, but myself being expanding to the size where I'm actually birthing a planet and having this awareness of being part of birthing civilizations, right? Like, it's the implications for starting to think outside of our silly little 3D, okay, are you going to have an orgasm? Like, it is just so, God bless, right? Like, we're doing the best we can. But I was just inspired, to remember some of my journeys as you're talking, and it's infinitely expansive, and so I so appreciate you talking. It's an interesting thing to say, hey, what's sex like with an ET? So, thank you for speaking to some of the aspects of the nonlinear.
And I wanted to mention that, I've been with a couple star beings, for sure. And there's one star being in particular who I was with, who I'm married to in another star. He's in another star system, and we have children and all that. So yeah, it's a different experience having having intercourse with a star being, in another dimension than it is on this level. It's not limited, and for me, it's just a lot more fun.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. It's fun to expand the understanding of what intimacy and merging is, right?
correct,
The other realm.
correct.
So when you say you are with other partners, or I don't know if that's the right word, but in a different dimension, that's a different aspect of you that is fully with that being all the time. Or, is it your physical but not physical, but on the ships? Or how does that work that you're actually with that being?
So the one I'm referring to, I'm not with him in that other star system any longer. So, but I'm here, but we met in another dimension. Hang to just be with each other, to hang out, and to talk about our children. Also, we can have so many different kinds of relationships with the star beings. To me, there are the ones I've had are very interesting and fascinating and no limitation, like
Yeah.
this Uranus density.
Yeah. I had it was an intense year of a relationship of like, the purpose of it was to help me learn how to move in the other realms. I needed a desirable carrot that would like help me sit down and meditate and learn these abilities. It was one of the best years of my life. And I think that tapping into these other realms really does help me be here as well. I'm thinking about an hour or two ago when I'm asking questions about like, didn't you get depressed? And now I'm like, oh, remembering all of my wonderful connections and lifetimes off planet, which is, it's very uplifting.
So I will share this because this can be a pretty awesome experience here. When two people are making love on this level, if they both speak light language, it really takes both people into, gosh, I don't even have the words for it,
Bliss.
an expansion and bliss, because you're speaking light language and you're in light. You're like in another dimension or dimensions. So that can really add to a relationship on this.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that reminder. It's not all. Yeah. Thank you. Ooh, that just gave me a little happy notes.
And the souls are communicating through the light language on a deeper level, because you're speaking to each other from a place that the soul understand, the spirits understand, that the body understands. So it's a whole nother experience.
Thank you for that reminder. It sounds like you've had that. I'm happy for you that you've had that. Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
wonderful. A couple more pieces of inquiry that have to do with almost both sides of the spectrum, actually. So you mentioned your experience with angels and how you love that's a wonderful experience for you and relationship. And then what about those who don't believe in the angels and who don't believe in any of this? How would you speak to that issue?
I communicate with the angels every day, and we all have our guardian angels. That's what we call them. The angels have such a beautiful high frequency about them. I just really love. And I will invite them to be here, to come in, to work with me, whatever body stuff or my life. I talk to the angels every day. For me, it's just very much a part of my life. What I love about communicating with the angels also is when I hear them telepathically, and that they're like singing. I can hear them singing telepathically. Again, there are no words, but it's an amazing experience. It really is like when there are many angels around, it really is like the celestial choir. And I get to hear that. And
What is the connection or relationship of the angels and the ETs? Are they totally separate? Are they the same? Like, how is that?
that's a good question. They work together. I mean, there are different groups of angels. So some of the groups of angels work with the star beings. There are many races who work together. They have like alliances. So the angels do work with star beings. I consider the angel star beings. And when I was on the ship as a child, there were angels on the ship. They weren't there all the time, but they were there. And I remember loving it when they would come, because in a sense, they are different from the star beings. Every group has their own frequency. In a certain way, it's all the same. We're all one in that. But I love the angels because I love listening to how they sing telepathically and unconditional love. And the angels really, I have, guess, kind of special place in my heart because I had a near death experience at 6 years old. And I was with the angels. I was with the star beings also, but the angels were really holding me and they were telling me I would have to come back to Earth and I didn't want to. At a very early age, I was having these encounters with these incredible, loving angels. And I've just always felt very close to them. Obviously, there's all kinds of different angels. I work and communicate a lot with the archangels.
Are there additional layers and relationships of angels that you have? Are they in categories of different? I've heard of different categories. Is that true for you and your knowledge?
So, from what they have shared with me, is it's a very human thing to categorize, and they're not really into categorizing things. There's like what they share with me is there's no quote hierarchy, that's a linear human thing. There are angels and beings who have their own missions and can be helpful. So on the ship, the angels were there overseeing the mantis. So some people say the mantis often oversee the quote grades, but what they have told me is they all work together, each one doing what they're good at, what their specialties are. So it's not a hierarchy. There isn't that kind of system with them, is what they've told me. So with the angels, I don't, I mean, I know when an archangel is present, there are countless kinds of beings, angels and star beings. So I just embrace them as they come. I don't have a need to know exactly who they are or where they fit in or anything like that.
We're having these conversations in part to change the narrative about the relationship of ETs and humans and the hybridization program. I'm all in. It's what makes sense to me. And yet there are so many where this feels absolutely, literally alien. So, can you speak to those who think this is, they would use the word crazy? They don't understand. They would think that we need to be institutionalized on some level, right? There is that level.
I guess what I would say is to have an open mind. And I don't try and convince anyone about what I'm talking about, but I like to share and maybe I've said something that might spark someone and someone else who isn't a believer at this point. But I think everyone gets to be where they are, and I really respect that. And so, but I think the main thing is not to look at both sides, to just be open minded. I think that's the best thing. So with the animal communication work, it's wonderful work to do. What I love about communicating with the animals is they're very direct. They communicate telepathically really well. And there aren't issues with the ego mind, which we would have with humans. So they're usually very open most of the time. And the communication work I've done, I've been doing for 40 years professionally. When they communicate with me, it comes to me in a way that I can just understand what they're saying. My brain is able to translate the energy that they are sending. And so the animals, I love them. They're very loving and they're here trying to teach us more about unconditional love as well. So when I communicate with an animal, they're usually conveying what's going on in their life. If they're unhappy about something, And the people I work with, they're usually calling me for a behavior problem, or if their animals crossed over, needs a soul recovery. I do all that kind of work. And the beautiful thing is the animals are just so open to the work. And they have the ability to shift in their behavior more easily than humans do. Because again, they don't have the ego getting in the way. So I can communicate with an animal. For example, a woman contacted me. She had one dog and had gotten another dog, and the new dog was jumping on top of the other dog, grabbing the dog by the neck with teeth. I communicated with that dog and I go, that's not acceptable here. And I did some work with that animal energetically, and that in 3 days, the dog completely stopped that behavior. So that's the power that animal, communicating with an animal telepathically can offer with their behavior, because they have a way of understanding me energetically, which is much easier than trying to understand sometimes what their person is trying to tell them in English. And so the animals, they're very direct about what's going on, and they know what's going on. So when I communicate with them, I'm getting the whole story. When the human is telling me their side of the story, um, they can be off about it because they're looking from their perspective, and they can be projecting a number of their thoughts and feelings onto the animal rather than seeing the truth of what's going on. So I like to get the story directly from the animals. And that way I can work with them in a much deeper and better way. So with the animal communication work, it's it's wonderful work to do. What I love about communicating with the animals is they're very direct. They communicate telepathically really well, and there aren't issues with the ego mind, which we would have with humans. So they're usually very open most of the time. And the communication work I've been doing for 40 years professionally. When they communicate with me, it comes to me in a way that I can just understand what they're saying. My brain is able to translate the energy that they are sending. And so the animals, I love them. They're very loving, and they're here trying to teach us more about unconditional love as well. So when I communicate with an animal, they're usually conveying what's going on in their life, if they're unhappy about something. And the people I work with, they're usually calling me for a behavior problem, or if their animals crossed over, needs a soul recovery. I do all that kind of work. And the beautiful thing is the animals are just so open to the work. And they have the ability to shift in their behavior more easily than humans do. Because again, they don't have the ego getting in the way. So I can communicate with an animal. For example, a woman contacted me. She had one dog and had gotten another dog, and the new dog was jumping on top of the other dog, grabbing the dog by the neck with teeth. I communicated with that dog and I go, that's not acceptable here. And did some work with that animal energetically, and that in 3 days, the dog completely stopped that behavior. So that's the power that animal, communicating with an animal telepathically can offer with their behavior, because they have a way of understanding me energetically, which is much easier than trying to understand sometimes what their person is trying to tell them in English. And so the animals, they're very direct about what's going on, and they know what's going on. So when I communicate with them, I'm getting the whole story. When the human is telling me their side of the story, um, they can be off about it because they're looking from their perspective, and um, they can be projecting a number of their thoughts and feelings onto the animal rather than seeing the truth of what's going on. So I like to get the story directly from the animals. And that way I can work with them in a much deeper and better way.
Thank you so much, Jacquelin. I really feel so blessed and honored to have had some time with you and to experience it's an awakening. It's a deepening of more, intelligence and cosmic awareness. So thank you for your time and everything that you do being here on this planet right now.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to chat with you this evening. It's been great fun.
Wonderful.
And thank you.